Yo, what's good, everyone? Sideshow MMA here, and today I've got to talk about this. All right. Sean O'Malley's getting a title shot, coming off of a loss. He doesn't deserve it. Okay, let's talk about it. The UFC missed the opportunity of Sean versus Jan 2 and a 5-rounder co-main event of a pay-per-view. Missed the opportunity. It is what it is. Sean O'Malley doesn't deserve the title shot. All right. In my opinion, this is a bit short-sighted from the UFC. If Sean O'Malley loses this fight, his star power does diminish a good bit. That's 100% true. Okay. I don't think it'll completely evaporate because he still has support from the Nelk boys, Aiden Ross, clowns like that. He's very tapped into the influencer scene. So I don't think he'll ever fall into complete irrelevancy. But his star power definitely diminishes if he loses again. Sean O'Malley has gone on Tim Welch's podcast and talked about how he's going to be 70% better, how healthy he is, all the things he stopped doing. So he's not really giving himself much room for an excuse if he does lose. So he's trapping himself in a way into he has to win this fight. If he doesn't win this fight, there's no excuses. He's already publicly said, "Oh, I'm feeling great. I cut this out of my life. I cut this out of my life. Thank you to Merab for giving me this loss and making me better." He's giving himself no room for an excuse whatsoever. I will say, despite all that, I'm leaning towards Merab in the rematch for sure. I understand the first fight was close-ish, and O'Malley allegedly had one hip or something. And he did have Merab hurt bad at the end of the 5th round. And there have been times Merab gets hurt. I understand. I'm making the argument against myself. I understand what the arguments are for O'Malley. Merab hurt against Marias, hurt against Cejudo. We've seen Merab hurt, okay? We know he's not invincible. His chin is not invincible. And I'm not denying the fact that O'Malley has a chance and could put him away early. But I think Merab will win. I think it'll be more dominant. And here's why, Something I've noticed about O'Malley, when things aren't going exactly his way, he simply just doesn't do much. So, I believe this happened the first time in the Halley and Pava fight was the first time I noticed it. And even though he put Pava away early, I'm going to explain this. But I'm going to get to that, all the examples I have. But first, I just want to say, I think for O'Malley to perform, he needs a guy like a Thomas Almeida, who's going to throw at him, come at him. Let O'Malley do what he does best, which is counter on the back foot. Or if not, someone that's just going to stand there to be hit, like Chito Vera, Chris Moutinho, guys like that. He against guys that don't do that kind of bounce around on the outside, don't do much offensively, don't give him much to counter or defend, he does struggle a bit output-wise, and that's exactly what Merab does. Like I said, I noticed this for the first time in the Halley and Pava fight, believe it or not, even though I know O'Malley made quick work of him, dude. It was slow up until the KO. The next fight, the Pedro Munoz fight. Munoz stylistically is a tricky matchup for O'Malley. He was doing a lot of bouncing around on the outside. Nothing was happening in that fight until the eye poke. There was nothing happening in that fight. Again, the Aljamain Sterling fight. Round 1, there was nothing happening, And that's not just Aljo's fault. That was O'Malley's fault too. He wasn't doing anything. He had no offense. Again, Merab. The Merab fight. It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? He does struggle against these type of opponents output-wise. And, as his career goes on, and he can't, if he can't find the finish, and he's letting fights slip away like this, he will 100% start to lose. If O'Malley can't find the finish on an opponent, and he's content with letting fights slip away from him, he will start to lose. And I'm not sure if he's going to exactly have upgraded that part of his game, if you know what I mean, by the time this rematch happens. So I'm not sure. Merab was rarely ever pressuring O'Malley with strikes, which, like I said, it makes things a little tricky for O'Malley. If Merab's just bouncing around on the outside, not throwing much at you, what do you do? It's tricky if O'Malley it's tricky for O'Malley to pressure Merab because Merab will shoot on him. O'Malley has to keep his range and wait for Merab to come in so he can counter him and try and clip him. Other than that, Merab has the advantage. So I'm leaning Merab. I also do think Merab has improved since the first O'Malley fight. He looked really good against Umar. He's been active. O'Malley's been MIA also. We don't know what's going on with O'Malley other than what he said publicly. So I'm leaning Merab in the rematch. But this is not even why I made this video. I just went on a little tangent. I made this video to talk about the missed opportunity of Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley too. Missed opportunity right there for the UFC to make. Jan is on a 2-fight win streak in the division. He beat Song Yadong, who just destroyed Cejudo, and he beat Figueiredo, bro. Like, Peter Yan deserves a title shot. He looked super impressive in both of those fights. In my opinion, if Pantoja isn't going to move up, which it seems like they're going to do Pantoja versus KKF, give Yan the shot. No one at bantamweight deserves this more than Peter Yan at this point, Even, you know what, though? I will say I understand why the UFC wouldn't want to give him the title shot. He did get 50-45 by Merab the first time they fought. He got his leg destroyed in that fight as well. People fucking forget that Peter Yan had one leg in that fight. Merab destroyed his leg bad. He got dominated by Merab. So, I understand the UFC, from their point of view, the lack of hype there is for that fight. From the casual fan, that might seem Yan gets destroyed like that. And then, the UFC books the rematch only 2 fights later for Yan. I get it, So then, why not do O'Malley versus Yan too? Why not run that? If that's what you want, if you don't want Peter Yan to get the title shot, that's fine. Run O'Malley versus Yan too. Why is O'Malley getting a title shot coming off of a loss? Doesn't make any sense. 5-round co-main event of a pay-per-view. It was right there, UFC. It was right there. And Merab, in the meantime, he could fight Pantoja, dude. I don't know why the UFC is, I don't understand what they're doing. Instead we get O'Malley, Merab, which, it's a fun fight. It's an interesting rematch for sure. But it's just not what I wanted to see. It's not completely deserved. I feel like they had a way better option. Like I said, let Pantoja move up and fight Merab. Let O'Malley and Yan rematch, and then the winner fights the winner of that. I don't know. It's pretty clear to me. But in the matchup of O'Malley versus Merab, I do lean Merab. I think O'Malley has probably 2 rounds to finish Merab, and if he doesn't, it'll only get worse for O'Malley as the fight progresses. I think Merab will be more comfortable in there against O'Malley, which that honestly could be his downfall. Merab's been more active. He's probably more confident in his abilities now. If he does gain confidence, start to pressure O'Malley, I could see O'Malley maybe countering and hurting Merab. But dude, even if Merab recovers super well from being hurt. So I don't know. I just think Merab is more improved. I like the activity from him as well. I'm gonna go with Merab for now. But it's subject to change. But yeah, I'm leaning Merab in the rematch for sure. But yeah. Anyway, that was it. Quick video. I appreciate everyone watching, and catching the next one. Peace.